Hello. Hello, welcome to Everyday Ordinary Extraordinary Men. I'm Martina and I'm here with Christina, and we are your podcast hosts. We are deep divers and avid students of life and powerful facilitators for healing. In real life, I'm a life coach specializing in parent and women empowerment, and I'm also a sound healer.
And I'm an intuitive healer who loves to blend massage therapy with energy work to provide customized holistic services. Martina and I both love to incorporate crystals, essential oils, angelic Reiki, intuitive guidance, and oracle decks into our work.
Now, let me tell you a little bit about the context. Most humans have a lot of preconceived notions and stereotypes about gender. For example, men are tough, silent, and forceful, and women are chatty, manipulative, or emotional. And in doing that, we put people in a box and often forget to see beyond those labels. And if someone is not fitting the mold, we might call them a tomboy or a sissy. And those and similar labels often cause discord. So here's our question. What would the world look like where we go beyond our preconceived notions and understand that we are so much more than our gender, that we humans are strong and soft and gentle, deep and powerful, tough, fierce and open, and that qualities are not specific to a gender, that we all have all qualities available to express? What would the world look like where we are free to be who we choose to be and express all of our emotions? When we allow ourselves to express the so-called masculine and feminine qualities within ourselves, we set ourselves free. When we allow others to do the same, when we accept all of them, we create synergy, peace, and harmony. And today we're here with Sundance. So, Sundance, why don't you introduce yourself and tell our listeners who you are?
Hi, such a pleasure to be here with you both. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you today. I really love being able to immerse myself in conversations. Firstly, I just wanted to say that, and just talking to you before this started, and Martina, connecting with you last week when we talked. It was just awesome to be in the conversation that we're in. So for me, it's like continuing the spirit of that conversation here. So um, I'm a men's coach. I am the curator of Sphere of the Sacred Man. And I'm also a corporate Indigenous relations coach. And so those are my two real areas that I spend the vast amount of my time in. And I have an amazing partner who's visiting down in the US right now. Her name's Karen the Kraken. She changed her last name to the Kraken. And so it's pretty cool. So, and we have 11 beautiful cats. And so, you know, the thing that I love about coming on podcasts is that I get to speak about sort of, I think I really pick up on sometimes the energy that's in that podcast. And when I said 11 cats, I'm used to working in the psychic field. Do I say that I'm a psychic? No, of course not. Do I work as a psychic? No, I don't do that at all. You won't find anything on me online about a psychic, but when you're uh, surrounded by animals like that, you understand that there's a whole nother language that exists in the field. And for a lot of times when I was a kid, that language showed up as anxiety. That language showed up as unable to focus. That language came through not knowing how to regulate the felt experience of life, and um, and now it shows up as awareness. Now it shows up as let's get listening a little bit more. Now it shows up as pause, and it shows up in all these different ways. And so I just wanted to start off by saying that because I feel at home here. And so I like to run and have conversations in loops and um, bigger loops and then smaller loops and come back and tie it all back together. So that's what I have to say for right now.
I love it. And I love that you have 11 cats because I don't have any pets at home. I live with 70 plants in my apartment, but my boyfriend has a cat, and we did have two cats and a dog, but we are currently a one cat family at the moment. Um, and we have an odd family that lives between two apartments, but it's just our fun way we live our world at the moment. But everything is energy, right? And so I love that you know that you were speaking to like when you were younger, the anxiety, and I think that's just not having a name for the energy we're feeling, right? Like when we're younger, we don't have language for it. A lot of our parents don't know how to explain it to us, and it turns as anger and anxiety and all sorts of things. But once we start having language for energy and for what we're feeling and experiencing, then we experience life very differently. There may have been a time when 11 cats may have been overwhelming to your system, but now that you have a different experience with energy, it's a beneficial, it's a beautiful space to be in.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. Well, it was when we had 5 cats, and overnight in just a short period of time, because Karen ended up bringing home a stray cat, and she ended up being pregnant. And we ended up, I was actually, I was in England at my coaching school, and um, the cat gave birth while I was away, and so Karen birthed these kittens, and we were going to put them up with the rescue because we took in a stray, and it turned into us becoming what do they call those? A foster fail. But it's I don't like looking at it that way now because we have personal relationships with these cats. So, but I mean that was like an overnight shift. We doubled overnight, almost more than doubled overnight. So the universe is abundant.
that it is.
It absolutely is, and in every way possible, right? In every way possible. So let me just say, like, how I experience you is just like, I love your depth, and I love your, I'm gonna say your vulnerability, like your willingness to be open and share. And so I am so appreciative that you're here with us. And if we really knew you, what would we know about you? If we really knew you, what would we know?
Hmm. Well, I really, my whole life was based on the understanding that something else exists beyond the threshold of physical reality. And that's always been a primary understanding of my life. And I suppressed it. I suppressed it. You know, up until probably 2017, like where I really started to live and offer from my spiritual awareness. But I had that spiritual awareness when I was a kid. It was there. I recall these moments. I recall a moment when I was walking home on a path from school. It was grade 1, and I was looking up at the sun as I was walking home, facing towards the west. The school was right in the middle of this playground, and there was a path that went right from the school, and it just went right to the back of our house. So my house was like right there. But I'm walking on this little path, and I'm looking at the sun as it's in the sort of southwestern part of the hemisphere and of the sky, and then I saw the trees, and I remember feeling the heat, and I remember just thinking that's a fireball in the sky. And I was in this dome thing, and there were these trees, and I just remembered saying, what is this? What can this possibly be? There's a fireball over there, and it's making all of this lit. There's something going on. Like, so as a child, I would have been 6 probably then. I inquired into the nature of reality. And shortly after that, I ended up going through a lot of abuse in my life. Um, my parents got divorced, and um, I ended up being with a father that wasn't well, because in the way that it worked, my dad just locked my mom out of the house, right? And so there became a very deep healing process that had gone through that. And I think part of life has shown me this, was that my father, he passed away in 99 of a heroin overdose. And so when that whole event happened, and that would have been about like 1986 to like 1987, 1988 was when I was going through all that real sort of deeper trauma stuff. My father passed away. Um, I saw that he was being a better father from the other side. And there was a real understanding of that for me in my life. And I had many different experiences after my father died that I couldn't ignore, because I knew it was him. When I was a little kid, Canada had something called the Indian residential schools. And those were where Indigenous children were forced into a certain type of education system run by the government and run by many different churches. And the abuse in these schools were rampant. And it was to the point that the social workers back in the 60s had sign off and were able to make the decisions as to which kids could stay home, or which parents were fit or unfit to take care of the children. And so they're just piling kids into these schools. And so my father was part of that whole thing that happened here in Canada. And it really, on the outset of Canada, wasn't talked about, right? That's a shadow aspect of Canada, massive shadow aspect. People see the red and white maple leaf. And so Canada has carried this with them for a long time. And, when my father started losing control in his life and decided to lock my mom out and keep us there, the real thing of it was he was doing what he was taught. And am I defending him? No, not at all. Well, we're taught by the people that raise us, directly or indirectly, and our behaviors will show that. And we don't know another way, that's impossible to do it. And so that created a whole mess for me later on in my teenager years. And after my father passed away, I had his eagle feather. My uncle brought it. I wonder if I have it here right now. I don't have it here right now. My father had an eagle feather, and it was put on his chest at his funeral. And they brought that feather back. The funeral was one province over in Manitoba. And so we traveled there. And my mom was telling me, she said, Sundance, when you're not here, your TV's turning off and on in the basement. And I'm hearing things going on down there. And I said, oh, okay. And she goes, well, what do you think that it's trying to tell you? What do you think that's trying to tell you? And I told my mom, I said, I don't think it's trying to tell me anything. It seems to be happening to you. It doesn't seem to be happening to me. So I was such a bad driver when I was a teenager that I had to surrender my driver's license for, I think, about a month or something like that. So I had to go down and take I had to go take a course, and I had to sign off on a paper to surrender my license for a month. So my mom were having this conversation, and she drives me down to our insurance provider, and I go and do my sign off and everything. I'm 19 at the time, And I take the bus back home, and I'm making a sandwich in the kitchen. And I remember thinking in my head about the conversation that I had with my mom. And I knew that I was deliberate in turning my TV off before I left. And we had this china cabinet in the living room. And in the living room, in the china cabinet, was the feather and my dad's urn. We kept the, we didn't do a burial for my father until 2021. So we had him all these years. And I walked to the edge of the stairs and I looked down and I saw that I had some blue posters from bands and stuff that I listened to. And I saw that there was a gloss coming off the posters and my TV was on. And I walked down the stairs and I just had that feeling. It was just like this internal feeling of like, I turned that off. And I reached around where my recliner was. I turned my TV off and I was nervous and I fumbled with my remote control. My remote control dropped down on the ground. It landed right beside my dad's feather. But the feather was upstairs in the urn, up on top of the urn. And I went and picked it up and I asked myself, like, what could this be? And I just instantly knew that it was my dad. And that he sent me a message to let me know that there's something else beyond reality. But this accompanies a lot of ghost stories and many different things about like ghosts and aliens and spiritual things that I heard growing up. And that was this is where I've become very aware of. We have what we see here in the light, and we also have these shadow elements that we carry. And I saw both sides of my father. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, is this like, is this awareness, is this something that you grew up with, that was talked about in growing up, or is that something that is innate of you, right? For me, like, because of your culture, I'm asking, right? It's like there's the stereotypes again. So I'm sorry about that, but is that something that has been handed down to you, or is it something that was so innate in you, that
Well,
awareness?
yeah, I believe that for me, and I mean, we're talking about belief because I don't know at what point it even started to happen. Right. But from my understanding and the way that I'm experiencing it, it's innate. And I don't think that this is exclusive.
Mhm.
I think that we all have it. I don't think that, and there's something happens in life that we shut it down. Right. But I knew that this energy and this formless spiritual essence existed. But I think I had fear growing up, being a teenager and stuff, wanted to be cool about my own conviction to speak about it in a way that was grounded.
I believe that when, Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, it caused a lot of mischief. Because, we're then so based on our mind, and we don't give ourselves permission to really be present and feel and sense what is going on around us. We shut it down, right? It's like I can tell you, I had experiences like that as a little girl, where I was playing and all of a sudden it was like, okay, this does not feel okay anymore. I need to get out of here, right? And it wasn't that anything had happened, right? But there was just a shift that happened in the energy. And you talked about your parents, right? It's like our parents learn from their parents, who learned from their parents, who learned from their parents. So nobody ever stopped to see is this working or not working? This is just how it's done, right? And if you have parents who tell you that's not true, and you want for survival to fit in, you're going to shut it down, right?
Yeah,
I believe most of us have shut it down and then had to reactivate it at a certain point, right?
for sure. And, this is a very interesting thing that you say, because, on the other side of your question about, is it innate or was it sort of taught to you or whatever? It's both, honestly, like, because, in hearing some of the stories that my father would tell me about some, like different, like just ghost stories. Don't hang your hair off the edge of the bed. And because something's going to pull on it, right? And that's just like, well, as a kid, for me, I'm thinking, well, it's kind of freaky. And at the exact same time, I'm like, well, where does that thing come from? I'm just thinking about all this stuff, right? So it's inspiring me to consider another realm, but that was the beginning of my shadow work when I was a child. And if you take a look at different forms of initiation for men, um, a century or 2 centuries ago, initiation addresses shadow. We need to do something with that energy. We need to find a way that the things that catalyze that energy, we need to find a way to address that unbridled fear so we can focus. And initiation extracts the disorientation so we can focus on what we need to focus on and orientate ourselves around that piece of focus without being disorientated and looking away. Right. And so that was, I could see that now. Right. I could see the essence of what was in these stories, because stories from my culture, storytelling carries the spiritual energy of transformation. And so it's alive. It's not like a bunch of information or data gathering. It's this living thing that's being spoken into the fabric of someone's soul. And that's where I really saw that. Now, what happened? It's interesting because I've heard this statement before. It's kind of like death by 1,000 cuts. And one of the things that happened is, so my family, when I was a kid, they always called me Sundance. So my given names are Justin, James, Sundance, Robson. They always called me Sundance. And so the short story is my mom and dad had a conversation, and it was decided that Sundance is going to walk the white path in life and he's going to walk the red path in life. He's going to be going to these schools. He's going to go to school. He's going to walk the white path when he's in school. We're going to call him Justin. Or sorry, we're going to call him Sundance, and whatever happens, happens. But there was always concern around me being called my Indigenous name because of what happened for the previous generations. I was in the first generation of kids that didn't need to go to residential school. Right. So I go into school. There's sort of an orientation the first day, or a day before kindergarten starts. And I just remember looking at my little kindergarten box and seeing a long name written on it. Right. And it was Sundance. And I went back into school when school started, and a couple of days later, the Sundance name wasn't written there anymore. It was Justin. And that did something to my identity. And it was like the first piece of me beginning to close the book on my spiritual awareness. The system was doing that. The institute was doing that. I'd already been raised with high spiritual variabilities, gifts, insights, because I remember it as a kid. I just do. You can't inquire into the nature of reality if you're not questioning duality or non-duality. It just won't happen. did I know that it was happening? No, I didn't, but I was inquiring and saying, but what is this? Seriously, what is this? So, that was sort of where, it's like innately it was intact, but there was a lot of things coming in from the world that were starting to press on my beliefs, and this whole thing is invisible. And the best way for me to convey it is to give someone an experience of being with me, so we can experience the fabric or the palpability of the essence that we're talking about in an experience. I can't try to share a concept with you about this. It's not going to work. It doesn't work that way. It's not to be conceptualized. So
Yeah, and you can never explain it, right? How do you explain that there's beings other than what you see and touch? And it's like,
yeah,
how could you? But then at the same time, it's like, well, do you believe air exists, right?
yeah, well, for sure.
you know
Absolutely.
it's that conversation. And as you were talking, one of the things that came up is, there is this painter, I think it's 15th century, I think, and he painted all these monsters and disfigured people and all of that. His name is Hieronymus Bosch. And for me, it always was fascinating because they didn't have TV. They didn't, how did they make it up? But then if you look at Star Wars, it's the same, right? It's like he must have seen something to be able to create that, right? I don't believe it's all just made up, right? I believe they might have had visions, or they might, something that led them to see that there's so much more that we don't see, right? I truly believe that. So I'm right there with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was so fitting and so in context that when after my father passed away, that feather moved the way that it did based on all of the history that I had there. It made sense.
Yeah.
And you can't make stuff up like this, because for me, that was just like, okay, there's something here that's like doing all of this. It's not up to me to do,
Yeah. When my mom was sick and dying, we watched Sylvia Brown a lot. Don't ask me why, but we did. And I remember someone asking her, she's like, Sylvia, whenever I take a shower, change falls on me. And Sylvia would have that gravelly voice, and she's like, oh, that's your loved ones on the other side trying to get your attention. So I was like, oh, we have mom, send me. And my mom's like, oh, I'll send you dimes. I don't know why even dimes, but after my mom passed, I started finding dimes everywhere. My mom's friends would bring them to me when I started telling them about this. Like, oh, look, your mom sent me dimes. I still to this day I find dimes. Um, and my dad has turned into the mischief fairy. Anytime something is screwing up in my world, I know it is my dad fucking with me from the other side. And when I can actually like stop getting mad about whatever's happening and be like, oh, it's dad playing with me, it just lightens it. I'm just like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, dad, could you stop doing that? Like my smoke alarm has been going off in the middle of the night lately. Just change the battery. It's not that. It's like full on like wah wah, like wailing in the middle of the night. No smoke in my apartment, no nothing. And I'm like, okay, Dad, enough of the smoke alarm. And once I said that out loud, it stopped doing it. I was just like, oh, okay, thanks, thanks.
Mm.
Um, but so yeah, I also have fun playing with my deceased ones on the other side. I'll yell at my Alexa and ask them to play me music, and it's always a song that makes sense from someone on the other side. So yeah, you
There you
can
go.
totally have fun with that energy for sure.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. Let's switch gears a little. Tell us about what makes you come alive. What are you passionate about?
I'm passionate about life, because where we're so interconnected now. Like, I love talking about the light and the shadow elements of things, because for me, it's so obvious now, and how easy it is for me to get caught up in it and not see it.
Yeah.
But this has allowed us, technology has allowed us to connect this way. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't know either of you. And at the exact same time, there's a spiritual, there's a very deep spiritual significance to us being able to connect this way. And technology has allotted this. And there's also an algorithm that's pulling people astray. And so what I love is having relationship. For me, that's for me is the ultimate on earth, is having personal relationships with people. You know, and the journey that my partner and I have been on, it's I found myself really struggling and not speaking about things for, well, I mean, we've been together for over 5 years now, so I would say years, but not the whole time. But I found myself struggling and not speaking to certain things, right? And now as we've grown in our relationship, I speak to things and she speaks to things, and we're creating this awareness of where there's such a deeper meeting of each other. And I don't know what tops that.
Yeah.
I just don't, you know, and for me, this is the human experience. And I'm so curious about this labyrinth called life. Like, it's the greatest action movie that's ever existed. It's the greatest drama that's ever existed. God is a tremendous playwright because, and script writer, because I just couldn't fathom some of the stuff that's occurred in my life and what I've been protected from and what I've been led, it seems like I've walked directly into in life. And so for me, it's the human experience. It's being with people. Maybe I could go a little even deeper into this because this seems like it's the place to have these conversations. And I sweat pretty much every single weekend in a ceremonial sweat lodge. And there's something very real about the rocks. There's something very real about the fire. There's something very real about throwing cedar onto the rocks when we're sitting in the sweat and smelling it. And there's something very real about the intensity of the heat of being in the sweat lodge. And there's a piece of me inside of that lodge that just feels like it's not going to survive if this carries on much longer. And it does. But someone else comes out of that lodge, you know, and when you enter into the lodge, it's from the understanding that you're entering into Mother Earth's womb. And when you're coming out, you're being reborn. And so I get to experience that rebirthing process in my life. And that's a tremendously real experience. And when I pick up my phone and when I'm in my DMs and when I'm writing a post, I'm doing so in some ways through the influence of an algorithm. And so I'm tremendously aware of this now. And one of the things that I'm very curious about is I've heard there's old stories, and I think even Nostradamus was talking about this prediction that there's going to be a great divide. I don't want to get into the whole who qualifies and who doesn't for that type of thing. It just makes me so curious because with the rise of AI and the dependency that people are developing with it versus having some type of spiritual identity or being able to work and be with the felt experience in the field, it makes me very curious about how many people are going to continue, especially the young ones coming up, are going to continue being pulled alongside an algorithm that doesn't have soul, versus the young ones that are going to grow up and have spiritual awakening and insight, and still and run parallel in that sphere, because it's happening and I feel it, because I see it happening everywhere. And it's not like I'm trying to create it through my seeing, but I can't not see the reality of what it's like when I'm in the city. Everything's very sort of placed and it's very neat, and there's a sign there, and look at all these groceries here to get that, and everything looks the same. That person took those tomatoes, oh, but right underneath it there's a whole bunch of other tomatoes that are exactly the same as that one, and it's all just sort of there. I go to a farmer's market and everything looks different than it does in the grocery store. I leave the city and it's like I'm not even in that thing anymore. So I live in a city, and I'm in Canada. We have a vast land here, right? And so it only takes me 10 minutes to drive anywhere I am from where I am in the city, and I'm out of town. Right. And so there's nature all around me. It's prairies, but it's fully accessible, and there's not really a lot of people anywhere. It's really real. And it looks so much different than being inside of the city.
It's the energy. Again, like we come back to, it's the energy, right?
Yeah.
They actually made pictures of the cells of an organic tomato as compared to a non-organic tomato, and it's completely different. It's completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or if you look at the images that Masuro Emoto made of the crystals, water crystals, where he froze them and he then labeled them and took pictures, right? It's the energy that we put into something that we get out, right? It's just really amazing and fascinating when we open our eyes to it, right? Not everybody is ready for that, and some peek in and then close the door again, and that's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like as you said, if you look at the shadow and the light, if everybody's here to serve us, to like, if everything is made for us, rather than against us, everything serves the purpose for our own growth and development.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why we need to see the contrast, and that's why we can become more aware, and then we get the choice, which I love, you know, like how you're sharing. It's like what that choice of what you're choosing for your life, right? It's really beautiful and really, really, really powerful. So let me switch gears a little bit. So if you had a magic wand and you could give people any quality, what would it be?
The quality to connect in love, because there's lots of people that struggle with that. And when I was in addiction, I really struggled to connect in love. I remember my mom invited me to a church. There was some type of like revivalist thing going on or whatever. And I went in there and everyone just looked so happy. And I just was like, oh my God. And, you know, and then this man just put his hand on my shoulder and he said, well, let me tell you, I love you. And I was just like, there's just no way, Mom, I'm leaving. And I do that now. And I mean it. I don't I go around saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. But when I'm connected with someone, I tell them that. And I see them that they're working and they're really like on an edge with something. They're just like, man, if they tell me, you know, man, like I'm just trying so hard and it just seems to be piling up here on me. And I'm really doing everything that I possibly can. And it's just like, I feel like I'm breaking. I can tell them I've been there. You are you, and I love you. And I think humans just crave connection. We're built for it. But how much of it gets suppressed?
A ton, right? Every time you get hurt, you close your heart up a little more, right? And anytime someone tells you you're whatever, you're like, oh, not doing that again, right? And then we just keep closing ourselves up, right? I'm not going to show all of me to these people because I've been hurt over there. And I'm not going to show all of me to those people because I don't think they like that woo side of me, right? And instead of like just being open to the world and spreading our love and not really being attached to whether they get us or not, right? Like it's ultimately really irrelevant if someone understands me. Just share the love, man, right? But that's not what we do, right? We're like, oh, I only want to share with the people I think are going to understand it or get it. And but when you can start getting that, not everyone's going to get me. Like my weird is not for everyone. But I'm just going to put it out there, and the ones that get it are going to get it, and the ones that don't, whatever. I'm not really attached because I'm just going to keep putting it out there for the ones that are going to get it.
And I think one of the things during COVID that showed up is you know, a friend of mine shared this with me, and I thought it was such a beautiful story. It's like her mother-in-law was in the hospital and she was slowly dying because during COVID they closed everything up. You couldn't visit anyone, so they moved her to hospice, and in hospice everybody could visit, and so she made a full recovery because she was now in community, right? And there's again, and I think I shared that before on the podcast, there's this experiment that they made with rats where they said, like there was a rat in a cage and they put water, regular water and water with drugs in it. And over time, the rat would go to the water with drugs. And what they found, they said, okay, so the conclusion is that if you give them two options, the rat will go for the drugs. And then they said, but no, because rats are pack animals. Now they put a whole pack of rats in a cage with water and with water with drugs, and very few would go to the water with drugs. And we humans are pack animals, but we are so isolated and so alone, and so we because as you were talking, the question that came up was, did you feel worthy to be in in um, community, right? Because most of us learn that we're bad and wrong rather than that we're love and that we are uh, that we're divine, and it's our birthright to be in communion and in community, right? So it's a really interesting aspect to that, because if we don't believe we're worthy, we will do everything to avoid it because we don't fit in ever.
Yeah, for me, it's both, because there were times in my life where I felt worthy to be in circles with people. And then I think when I would be social with people, I think then that would be when the unworthiness showed up, where I was just like, man, I'm kind of in the wrong room. And I would think like a lot of these people here are a lot more successful in their life, or have achieved more in their life, and on the outset it looks like that for me. And I just remember one of the very first men's experiences that I had back in 2017. I traveled all the way to England and I went to a men's immersion, and I thought, oh my God, I can't believe I got invited here to sit with 11 other men from around the world. And I mean, these are incredible men. And then I saw how like humble they were. And I'm not saying that humble, like not from a place of not acknowledging themselves, but from a place of like really seeing me, right? And like really being present with me. And that was picked up through transmission. But I can go back to the time when I was a kid, right? And when you talk about the worthiness, it's like when I realized that I was Indigenous and that meant something, like, see, being Indigenous or being Indian to me before I went to school was a pretty cool thing.
Mhm.
When I went to school, it was something to be hidden. So I needed to hide the fact that I was an Indigenous. So when it comes to talking about worthiness, that came with me wherever I went. Do whatever you can to hide the fact that you're an Indigenous person. It's not accepted. Be essentially white, whatever that is. And so um the worthiness thing was always a great work. But when I got clean and I was sitting in a treatment center with other addicts that were also, they were trying to get clean. We were all clean in treatment, but whether we would stay clean when we got out was another story. But when I sat with other people that I guess we were sort of the dejected of society because we can't get through a day without using. I never really struggled with worthiness there. I didn't. But when I came back into the world, I did. So it was like, who are my people? Who are the people that I can have this conversation with? And that was really where my professional development started in a drug treatment center when I was being treated for drug addiction. That's when personal development started with for me. And that was when I became reintroduced back into my soul. I remember walking out of one of the group sessions and I just finished, I had some things come to me after doing this thing. I'd written down a whole list of things about that I was powerless over in my life. And I came back to this moment in my life where um, I remembered something that I'd totally forgotten about. And it was just, there was an image of me and I was looking down at myself as a kid sitting on this mattress and I'm in front of a TV and um, there were some dark things that were happening in that moment. And I just had this very strange thing, this strange feeling. And I just sort of thought, oh my God, that's me as this little kid. And I needed to go and share it with the group about what it was that I had experienced. And um, I had left the that group session and I went out back and I looked at this flower and it was just this bright yellow little flower. And when I looked up at it, I looked up and I looked up at the sun and I was immediately taken back to that moment when I was a kid on that path instantly. And it was asking God or creator or whatever it is up there or in here, what is all this? And then that was when that timeline clicked and creator pulled back the veil on the stage and said, wow, here we are. And I realized I had been looking down all those years and not looking up.
Mm.
And that's when I started looking up and forward in life. I didn't walk with my head down anymore after that.
So powerful and so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it kind of leads us into talking about the work that you're doing right now, right? I mean, clearly that's kind of what propelled you to work with the men that you're working with, right? And the sphere of the sacred man, right? So do you want to talk about more about that right now?
Yeah, for sure. And so for me, the whole men's work was something that I always really, once I discovered it, I knew I needed it my whole life. And I struggled to talk about things. I struggled to share things. I struggled with transparency. I struggled with my darkness. And like, I can't tell anybody that. And I saw how much liberation was in it once I did. I remember walking to my first, and I'm going to talk about the men's group, but in the context of this, I remember going to my first 12-step meeting when I was getting clean. And I remember seeing one of the steps that said, the personal inventory and disclose the exact nature of our wrongs. Right. And I remember thinking at my first meeting, I thought, does that mean I'm going to need to tell them this thing? Does that mean I'm going to need to tell them this thing? Does that mean I'm going to need to tell them this thing? Well, you don't have to, but if you do, something's going to shift. Right. And it was when I went through the steps the first time that I saw how much lighter I felt through sharing some of these instances in my life, you know. And when I got the broader context of like, you know, you're this way because life has been this way, you know, you're not a bad human. You're living under the misunderstanding of you're anything other than whole to begin with. And you've been chasing your tail around that. And so a lot of men in today's day and age are experiencing a lot of pain and struggle. And it's not until men experience pain and struggle that it seems like they actually make a shift and they reach out to do something. It doesn't need to be that way. Like ... It doesn't need to be that way. It tends to be that way. And trust me, there's areas in my life where I still do that. It can also happen through being curious and having a burning desire to want to make a shift in your life. It's like, you know, things could be different, and inquiring into that because I have a desire for something to be different. I have a desire for this to be more. And it's only in the moreness and the wholeness of you that would be inquiring into that. That wholeness and moreness in you is running into the threshold of your personality and what you're resisting. That's why you're feeling it. It's not a big deal, guys. But we'll make it a big deal. We'll make it's this. No, trust me, I'm unique. You don't know. And it's that passivity to that, thinking that we can just fall asleep to that. I needed to look at that in my life, because where else is that showing up? Like, seriously, it can't just be showing up here. It's got to be like here, 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 and here too. And no doubt it was. And things work like that. And so all the men that come into Sphere of the Sacred Man are all in the process of becoming what it is that they want to live into from the place of them that's already whole. And it's the way I like to word it is it's a rite of passage for the contemporary male, you know. And I also encourage men to like, just, it doesn't need to be my men's group. Find one, connect with men. If you identify as a male, go and connect with men and experience yourself in a way that you haven't before. And this is the piece about, I'm talking about this algorithm thing. Like, the word algorithm has just showed up in our lives in the last few years. But there's an algorithm in passivity. And if you don't address the passivity, things will start moving in your life and you might not like what moves out of your life. Because it's going to move out of your life if you don't put your consciousness on it. You need to understand what your consciousness means to the people in your life. And when you know the power of your consciousness, you'll see the light of awareness and you'll get a better perspective, but you won't be able to see it if you don't do anything. Mm. And then you'll be left to ask, what happened? Well, let's go back to the first sentence, pain and struggle. We're here now. We could have done it with curiosity and burning desire. we could have did it on the first floor. I mean, now we got to go down to the parkade. So, this is why I want to create this space for men. And I've lost men to, for them, suiciding themselves. And I don't use the word commit. I use the word suicided themselves because I don't know what it was like. I have no idea what it was like. I don't know what it was like for them inside of their bodies. But I want to give all men an opportunity to be able to share, to help lighten the load and release some of that pressure so we can all have better qualities of life. Let's do
Amen.
something about it. Yeah.
So if you're a man out there, or if you have a man in your life that you think would benefit from working with Sundance, how could they reach you?
So my website is spiritwealth.ca, spiritwealth.ca, and you can connect with me on email at spiritwealthcoach@gmail.com, Facebook, Sundance Robson, Instagram, Sundance Robson.
Fantastic.
I'm very easy to find. I get back to all my messages.
And we will include the links in the notes for the podcast. So if you didn't have time to write that down, just check in the links, and all the information will be there, as well as Linktree information from Martina and myself. Sundance, we had a blast with you here today. We just love these deep dive conversations. We love your energy and the work that you're doing to end generational trauma, and to just really give men a place to find themselves, to know that they are whole just the way they are, and to live amazing lives. So we are just thrilled to watch the work that you're going to do. Just keep transforming people for the better. And it's just amazing. So everyone out there, thank you for listening. If you loved this, please leave us a review. Please share with your friends. And please remember that you are extraordinary. You rock. Until next time.
Bye for now. Sundance, you get to take it away.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I want to acknowledge both of you for what you've created here. It's an absolutely incredible thing that you have in creating a platform to have these conversations. I love it because it's so open, and it gets to, well, for me, I got to speak freely from kind of like just who I am and what life is like, because for me, that's really that's what's in the content of the coaching sessions that I do with people. Like we sit with each other and we're humans. That's what we are. We're humans. And so, for a lot of what is built in the world around how-tos, I love that here is about being with someone and being with people. And so I acknowledge you, Christina and Martina, for what you've created here. It's serving the world in a powerful way.